Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks from the water that I will give will never be thirsty again. The water that I give will become in those who drink it a spring of water that bubbles up into eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water, so that I will never be thirsty and will never need to come here to draw water." Hello, this is my last Faith-Cation for this summer. Michael has one more next week, but this is the one that I will finish up on. And looking at where I am located right now, I bet you can't guess where I am. It could be any number of places with green, lush forests around us. In Arkansas, we are blessed to have many places that look just like this. But this is a place that gives me rest and restoration. And it represents one of the 3 places that we're going to visit today that will all be united around the common idea of gathering around the water. In particular, of gathering around life-giving springs of water. So, this place where I am, perhaps it would be more easy to figure out if I changed my background. So now you may know where I am. Some of you may think I'm in Brazil, but my guess is that the vast majority of you, especially those who have lived in Arkansas for a long time, know that I'm in Eureka Springs. Eureka Springs is one of the places that I go to really rest and restore. And that's what I think of when I think of this town. It is where I will tend to take 3 or 4 days and go off in retreat. I have gone here to write a good chunk of gospel discipleship that we'll be studying in the upcoming weeks. I have gone here just to walk around the downtown, to be in the presence of the springs, to go out to the Christ of the Ozark statue, to spend some time with God. And I do find this place to be restorative for me. And that makes me think of this passage in John 4, the passage where Jesus and the woman at the well meet. And we're going to reflect on that throughout this journey that we go on today. Jesus is tired. They have walked a long ways. It is the middle of the day. He wants some rest. He sends the disciples off to go get some food, and he is reclining next to this well. And this woman comes up to him there, and he needs her help to be fully restored, to get the kind of rest that he is talking about, at least initially doing, and he asks her for some water. And that begins this conversation that they have together. But it is really in this space where he has come, where he knows that there's a place of refuge, where he knows that community will gather throughout the day. It's actually kind of an odd time of day for community to gather. Usually the women are there in the morning and they're there in the afternoon, later afternoon. But it is a gathering space for community, and he has stopped here to catch his breath. And that's what I do when I go to Eureka Springs. It's a time and a place for me to stop and catch my breath. And one of the key places where I can catch my breath is at Thorncrown Chapel. I don't know how many of you have been there before, but it is a chapel made of basically wood and glass. You can go in, you can sit in quiet. It's open if there's not a wedding going on or a Sunday service. It's open during the day for people to just come in and pray. And they have soft music playing. And I always make it a point when I go to Eureka Springs to stop at Thorncrown. And if it's open, to go in, to sit there, to pray, to recenter myself. In a sense, it is this place in the springs where I also do what Jesus does, which is just stop for a minute and recenter around sometimes those very basic needs, but recenter around community, recenter around identity, recenter around my purpose. And Jesus will do that in the course of this interaction with the woman at the well. So this is one place of springs that brings me rest. But there's another springs that I go to for a different reason. And this springs is Hot Springs. Of course, my family has a home in Hot Springs Village. And so it is obviously one place that I am centered around for that reason. But actually, Hot Springs was near and dear to me most of my life growing up. First, we took many vacations here. But then once we moved to Central Arkansas, Hot Springs became a place that my father loved to take people whenever they came to visit us. And he had a routine. He would take folks to Bathhouse Row. We would go up to the mountain, top of the mountain. We would walk the Grand Promenade. We would eat apple fritters at Granny's kitchen. And he did all of this out of his love for our state and his love for where we lived, but more than that, to extend hospitality. And that brings me to the next part of the passage in John 4 where the woman at the well and Jesus are gathered, which is they've had this moment of rest in which they're talking about how to share water with one another. But in particular, they have this profound encounter of hospitality. And the well is not owned by either of them. The well is a common space. So it's not that one is necessarily responsible for bringing the other hospitality in that space, but they are two people interacting, and they are called to either be hospitable to one another or to be inhospitable to one another. And in all honesty, everything around them said to be inhospitable to one another. First of all, they were a man and a woman. And it was unusual, at least, for a man and a woman alone to be talking in a public place like that, especially an unrelated man and woman. They were Jew and Samaritan. Jews and Samaritans were long-held enemies of one another, which is interesting because they're actually of the same family tree. They are definitely related to one another, but there's been a lot of history between them that's divided them. And so we have this Jew and this Samaritan who are in this space together as well. And so they had reasons to be inhospitable to one another. And yet here they engage in meaningful conversation. They talk about what makes true worship. They talk about what is meaningful about our spirit and our life. And Jesus actually ends up confessing to this woman, naming for her. She suspects it. She hints at it. She recognizes that he's a prophet, but she hints at the fact that he could be the Messiah, and he confirms that for her. And it's the first confirmation that he's the Messiah in the Gospel of John to anyone. He gives this to this Samaritan woman. What an extension of hospitality on Jesus' part, that he was present for her and saw in her something special and was willing to engage with her and meet her where she was, but also to empower her. But then also what hospitality of this woman to sort of break down the social barriers and engage instead of seeing that there was a man at the well and turning away and not going forward. Also conversing with him, talking with him about water, and talking, as I said, about so many meaningful things with him. There was incredible hospitality extended on both sides of that moment. This final place where water comes up from the earth, where it springs forth, and where it brings me life, is actually Jacob's well. We've been talking about this story between Jesus and the woman at the well. It takes place at Jacob's well. And I had the opportunity when I went to the Holy Land to go to Jacob's well. And this is it. It still stands after all these millennia. It is still a place where people gather. Now there is a church over it now, but it is still an active well. It is still open and available. And in fact, in this video that's playing, you're seeing that we actually got the chance to raise water up from the well. That morning, I had done a devotional on the woman at the well passage, and so our guide, whenever it came time to raise water from the well, called me over to actually start that process. And here's what I remember about raising the water. I remember that that it was light. The burden was light as I started. And then when the bucket hit the surface, it was suddenly so heavy. And I realized in that there was something profound in that moment of, yes, the burden that Jesus gives us is light, but it also has some weight to it as well. Particularly when we think about the possibilities, the life-transforming reality that we bring to people whenever we share the living water, which is the gospel, which is the story of Jesus Christ, which is Jesus himself. It is both light and heavy to do that. And then when we got the water up, we all got to taste the water, and it was so refreshing. It was so cold. But more than that, it was tasting the very water at the very well where Jesus had stood and transformed this woman's life. And I had such joy, such unbelievable, unbridled joy at being able to be in this place and have this encounter and this experience. To know that so much of the biblical story had gathered around this well, and here I was partaking of that as well. And I felt in that the recommissioning in my life to share with people that Jesus has shared with me that he is the Messiah. And to run out from that place and to bring that living water to everyone that I can encounter, to refresh the world with the good news of Jesus Christ. Just as the woman at the well did, who dropped her bucket and ran and gathered people and said, "This man has told me everything about myself. I believe he is the Messiah. You must come and hear him." And she brought so many to the well, to that actual well, but to the well really springing up from Jesus Christ, that living water that will quench all thirst. I have such joy bringing that word to the world. She had such a joy being set free to bring others to Jesus. I pray and hope that you encounter such joy as well. So whatever springs forth from your life, wherever you find rest, go to that place and be restored for the work that is before you. But then, wherever you are at home, remember to extend hospitality to others. And then remember that we have been given the living water, but it's not for our own refreshment alone. It is to be shared. It is to bring others to that well. It is to allow everyone to encounter the joy. So let rest, hospitality, and joy spring forth in your life. Be modeled around this story from John 4. And know that when we drink from that well, when we drink from the well that is Jesus Christ, we will never be thirsty again. Amen.